All right, everybody, we will go ahead and get this thing kicked off. Thank you for joining us. It is July 20th, 2017, 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time here in beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana. Appreciate everyone joining here with us today. My name is Adam Becker. I'm the Senior Director of Accounts at Octiv, and joined with me, as always, is wonderful Kelsey Briggs, who needs to update our slide. Say hello, Kelsey.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this Thursday afternoon. We're excited to be back for another month with our client webinar.
Yep, and we have a fun one for us today, a couple different topics to talk about. We'll be going through, as always, some enhancements we made to the product over the last month since our last webinar. We'll be going into some Q&A. For any newcomers out there, as we still see people joining in the conference here, this is hopefully a little bit different webinar than what some of them you may or may not attend out there. We like to really make sure that we're orientating all of our content for you. We want this to be more of a discussion. So if you have questions about what we're talking about, please go ahead and use the GoToWebinar functionality to submit a question. We monitor that the entire time, and if it makes sense and in context for us to answer it, we will go ahead and stop mid-webinar and be able to answer as many questions as we can. Again, obviously this is always for you. Another just announcement is we are recording this, so we'll be sending this out to everyone. If you want to listen to it again for whatever reason, we're actually going to be jumping into some more advanced functionality today. So if you want to go back and review it, certainly we'll be able to, and we'll send that out, and it'll be available on their website later.
Great. So with that, let's dive on in. We've got 3 features that we want to talk about today, and these are really going to be targeted for our administrators. So the 3 that we're going to dive in a little bit deeper are covering additional reporting columns that have been added in the last month. I'm really excited to show you how you can now add new fonts to your Octiv account. And we're going to go into an advanced topic today talking about creating auto-generated tables. And we're actually going to peek under the hood a little bit and take a look at that HTML source code that's making those happen. When you understand the components that are making those auto-generated tables happen, and you could think maybe a pricing table, an order form is the type of auto-generated table I'm talking about. When you're able to understand some of the code that's making that happen, you can maybe do some more complex things with that. So we're going to cover those 3 features today, and feel free, like Adam said, to shoot us any questions as we go through, and we'll make sure we can address those. So diving right in, the first announcement we've got on things that have been released in the last month since we last spoke are additional columns that have been added to the Octiv reports. So administrators, when you're logged into Octiv, you'll see the Reports tab in your account. And I've got a little picture here in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. There's really 5 reports there that you'll have access to, and we're going to see very similar type of data on our documents and document engagement report. Just really quickly to tell you the difference between those reports, that document engagement report is going to specifically be showing us documents that you've shared online that have online engagement. So that's the difference. But data that we're seeing, data points, the columns that show up for that documents and document engagement report, we can see here on the left-hand side a full list of those. And the bullet points in orange are going to be those ones that were added in the last 30 days. So we've now got a description field. We can see the last time that that document was modified, the updated date, when the document was first viewed by a customer, when it expires, and the number of versions. So take some time just to scroll through this list and take a look at the data that's available there. If you're interested in maybe doing some reporting or some reconciling of maybe things that have happened over the last week, month, quarter, year, this would be a place where you could come in and see that snapshot of activity in the account. It's downloadable to a CSV file, so you can take that offline, sort and organize it to view that data as you need to. And because we're keeping a record here, each document shows up that can let you kind of analyze some things that are happening over time. So that's our documents and document engagement report. Our users report is the next column I have here, and you can see in orange that we've added some new fields to that as well. Time to publish, which is going to show the number of days from when the document was created to when the document was published, the first creation date for that user, the mobile, email, company title, and then address information for that user. So here can be a place where we come specifically looking to summarize users for a specific date span. So I think one of the most helpful things that we can look at here might be things like the last time that user was active, looking at the close rate, and maybe some of the production for those specific users. So we're adding some more data points to make that report more useful. That's the users report. And last two reports, no additional fields were added in the last 30 days, but just wanted to call attention to them so that we're covering the breadth of what's available in our reports tab. That's our templates report. Be a great place to go to understand how templates are being used in your account. We can see the number of documents that were created, how many clients those documents were created for, how many moved through to be published and viewed and accepted, and then we can see a close rate for each of those templates. And again, that's going to summarize for you on a specific date span that you can enter. And finally is our pages report. Again, summarizing for that date span that you enter, where we'll be able to see a specific page name of content. This is really going to be helpful for our customers who are sending documents online and have their prospects engaging with that content, spending time viewing that on their computers. We're going to be counting, keeping track of the length of time that people are spending on those pages to show you some of your most popular content and how folks are interacting with that. So that's our pages report. Great. Next one I'm excited to share with you is our new font manager. So administrators, you're now going to have the ability to search and add Google fonts to your account using this new font manager. And I'm going to show you how this works live in just a moment. We'll go through an example. Once this font is added to your account, we'll then be able to see it show up in our Octave theme builder, which means that we can apply these new fonts to any of the proposal or contract documents that you're creating in your account. It is worth calling out that the fonts are managed in a different way for our presentation tools. So what I'm specifically showing you today, the font manager that we're talking about, is specifically impacting Octave proposals and contracts because we're using the Octave theme to apply those new fonts. So you'll keep access to all of the fonts that Octave has in the system today. And we recommend that you aren't using more than 3 fonts on any given theme that you put together, and that's just to make sure that we've got optimal document load time. We're not utilizing too many fonts. And then finally, if you're curious about fonts that would be available, you can look at a list of all Google fonts. I think there's over 800 of them at fonts.google.com. We're specifically able to load in fonts that have an open font license, and I'll show you where you can take a look at that in just a minute here. If you've got any questions on this new feature, because it's a really exciting one that you could take a look at today, if there's maybe some brand standards or fonts that you're interested in getting into your account, be sure to be asking those so that I can cover those as we take a look at this live.
And as she's doing that, as a former web designer, please, I must urge you, do not use Comic Sans or wingdings in your presentations or proposals. Is
that free advice?
That is free advice. You can send comments to Kelsey at Octiv.com.
Great. So I've accessed our font manager through our administration panel. And here is where I'm going to be able to type in to search for that Google font. So like I said, we're pulling that from fonts.google.com. So just to give you an idea of what this looks like. And I've picked out this Limonada font that I'd like to load into my system. And like I said, we're going to be specifically looking for that open license. So when I open up this font, there's going to be some information here about this font. And when I scroll down, I'm able to view that license. So this meets my requirement, and I'll be able to load this into the Octave system. So back in my font manager, I'm just going to search for that. And it's going to offer me various variations of this font that I can load. So I've automatically checked here the regular version of this font. What we're talking about here are basically the weights of the font, so you can tell 300 is going to be a bit more thin, 700 more bolded. So I can choose from this list what I'd like to load into Octave by selecting those variations. And then it's as simple as adding the font to my list. And we'll see that show up here. You can see I've loaded in one font earlier today, and so I've got 2 additional fonts available in my account. Once we've added that into the account, the next step is really making that accessible to your users and the documents you're creating through your theme builder. So let me open up a theme to show you what that looks like. As I get into some of my content here, I'll use the paragraph text as an example. I'll be able to, in the drop-down, select my font. The fonts that have been added to an account are going to show up for you at the top of that list. And then you'll see alphabetized the rest of the fonts that Octave, the default fonts that are available today. So there's that new Limonada font that I've added, and by selecting that next to my theme builder, I'm able to see what that looks like in this example document that my theme builder is pulling together for me.
We do get a lot of questions around fonts, and just to touch on a quick topic of custom fonts, because a lot of you out there have asked us about this. When we are releasing this type of functionality around Google Fonts, it's really important to understand that custom fonts, so if your organization has literally a custom font set that they've built for their organization, that works really, really well for your website that you wholly control, as well as printed material. However, one of the main reasons why we're exposing Google Fonts and why they must be open is because when you think about sending these types of documents all across the world where people are loading those fonts on their own devices, not always are those custom fonts available. And so it's really important that if you do have a custom font that your company uses as maybe your brand policy, most organizations out there are starting to move towards this open font idea, or at least have a corresponding Google font that is very similar to potentially your custom font. So not only is this just a best practice in our industry, but it's also just a good practice for everyone to really start moving towards away from the custom fonts and more towards kind of open source fonts, just so everyone, when you're designing documents, that you know exactly what that's going to look like, because that font is available to everyone no matter where you're sending it. So just really important to know. It's not necessarily a limitation of Octave, just a best practice of what we see in the industry.
Great. So excited to share that one with you. Get in there and check that out in your account today. There's no additional enablement you'll need to access this. You can find that for our system administrators in the administration panel. And then today we're also going to dive in a little bit deeper on an advanced topic, that is the auto-generated tables. These are tables that will allow us to pull data from our CRM into Octave to build a representation of a table. So I've got an example here on the right-hand side of my page of an order form. And maybe we, in this example, pretend that from my CRM, I'm working off of an opportunity and I've added a number of products to that opportunity, and I'm going to use that to build this auto-generated table. So really with the click of a button, my user lands in a document that presents this form for them. And for those administrators we've got on the phone, there are certainly a way for you to build and maintain these types of auto-generated tables, and we wanted to go into a few of those details today. So looking at the example I've got here on my screen, there's actually 3 tables in this example order form. So we're using some of the data that comes in from our CRM to determine how we'd like to display those products. So in this example, I'm actually using the data to break out my products and services so that those will display in different tables. And I've got a third table down here at the bottom that's actually showing a grand total. So we built these as 3 separate tables and really applied some smart behavior to them to know what to show when and where. So we'll go into some details about how you can build this using the Octave editor, and then we're going to peek under the hood to look at that source code to understand that just a bit more. So building this with our editor, I've got, let's see here, about 7 steps that we'll just run through. But this involves adding a table to your document, and you want to make sure that that table has at least 3 rows. We're going to end up styling that table to have a header, a body, and a footer, and we'll go into just a little bit more detail on that in a moment. So we're adding our table to the document, at least 3 rows and as many columns as you need to represent your data. We're then going to give the table in the Properties panel a class which will define it as a pricing table. So these are the steps we're getting ready to format this table so that it's ready to bring in the data from our CRM. My next step is, like I mentioned, we're going to format that table to have a header. Maybe that's where we're entering in the headers for each column, like product and quantity and price and total. And then we'll have a footer row, and that's where we can do some summing, maybe a total for those products at the bottom.
And just one quick side note here on the header and footer row, or at least very much the header row, the look and feel of that header row within the document itself is also controlled by the theme. So if you think about, hey, I want this to look with so-and-so font and with this background color, that is not controlled here per se. It's best controlled from the theme. So just as we're thinking through how to set up all this from beginning to end, also think about design, look and feel. Whenever you hear that in your head, just think about the theme and how to control it there.
Yep, absolutely. We're then going to use our table editor to help us understand where this table is going to populate, where we're going to get the data and how we should populate it. So when you click on your table, you'll see a gear icon which will open this window for us. And I've highlighted here just 3 areas that we're going to be putting in some information for our table. So the first is our data source. And this is helping us understand where are we going in the CRM to understand what data is going to be in this table. So in this example, let's say that we're working off of our opportunity, and those product line items are actually called opportunity line items. So that would be my data source that I would select here in the drop-down that appears for data source. A data filter is what allows me to control what's going to show up in that table. So I alluded to in my example of the order form that I split out the products and services. So I could add a filter here to this table that maybe says only show products if they contain the word product, or only show products if they have a family or a product code like services, which helps me split out those different tables to only show what I'm interested in. And the last area here is our sort by, and that's going to help us define in what order the products in this table show up. Once I've set up the information for my pricing table, then I'm able to populate the table with the information that I would like to show up. So these are really adding the variable pieces of data into the table. And I've got a pro tip for you that if you use our percent sign, you'll see a drop-down appear that will let you quickly pick from a list of available data points to fill out your table. Just a few steps left here. So after we've added in those data points, the variables that's going to populate my table, I can actually format those pieces of information that are coming in. So perhaps for a quantity, I'd like that to be an integer, a whole number. And perhaps for a list price, I'd like that to come in as a currency. So by clicking on that cell, I can actually change the class of that document to show how I'd like. And the last step, certainly optional, allows you to add styling to the document. So maybe in this example, I've bolded some things, I have some italics, I've changed my product name to be, to use my sea foamy teal branded color, Kelsey green, as I call it. And so I've styled this document to meet my brand standards. So those are really the steps using the Octiv editor and the tools that are available to you in our user interface to build an auto-generated pricing table.
Great. And we had one question come in, just where do you find where all these places are set up? And I think we are going to walk into a live demonstration here where we can see how to do that, right?
We sure can. And you'll certainly have a recording of this webinar to come back to so that you can follow along live. But we also have this well documented with a bit more detail on our support site. So if you're interested in visiting octiv.com/support, you can even type in the word table, and auto-generated table article will come up for you, relevant for the CRM you're integrated with, and that'll walk you through these steps in more depth. So next, we told you we're going to peek behind the hood, and that's exactly what we intend to do here with some color coding. But we wanted to walk through the pieces that are really in the background making this table work. So what we've done is opened up the source code, and you can get to that by clicking Edit and Source Code. And I'm going to just go down the list here of the different colors that we're calling out in our source code here. So first is our custom pricing class. This would be something that you could actually type into the document to get working, or if we, just like we followed the instructions on the previous slides, is actually what happens when we tell our table to be a pricing table. So we set that class to be custom pricing. That's really telling our table how to behave in this way. Next, we've got that data source. So that's like pulling in those opportunity line items. That's telling us where to go look for this information. I have a data filter, and in this example, I've included a more advanced statement. So this is actually two statements. It's looking for my product name to include or be like the word product, and it's looking for the family to equal subscription. So there are several operators that you can use in these types of statements. We can be looking for equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, or equal to, like, not like, which is in like here, is blank, and is not blank. So those are some of the operators you can use when you're maybe thinking about some of those statements that you'd like to use when you're setting up that data filter. And again, that data filter is controlling which products really make the cut to be a part of this table. So in this case, I'm only going to include products that have the word product in them, and they're a part of my family subscription. So that's building that first table for me of the products. In orange, we can see our sort order, and that's what's going to determine the order that the products show up in. My CRM has a way for helping me organize my products, and it's actually called sort order, so that's what we've included here. Maybe another way you'd want to organize this is by the highest number of quantity showing up first. So we could also sort this document by putting in quantity there. Moving on down, just to show how this source code is really building the table. We have our next row, that's going to be our header row showing up for us. And we're pulling in each of those 4 different column headers for my product, quantity, unit price, and total price. You can see where that's displaying. The next piece of this source code is going to be that middle part of the table. This is our body. And what Octiv is really doing here is we've created a row that is going to repeat itself for every product on the opportunity. So if I have 3 products here, I'm going to be essentially creating one row 3 times based on this. So it'll show my product name, description, quantity, list price, and total price 3 times, all within my table. And the last area is my footer. And a footer would allow us to do some nice summing. So pretty common in an order form might be wanting to display a subtotal at the bottom of my table. So here I've included SUM to sum up the total price. And including that in my footer means that it's going to look at all of the products that were included in this table and sum up that variable for me right there at the bottom. So pretty handy. So in the end, this is the table that I built. I've got my header row across the top. I've repeated that middle row, my body, 2 times for the 2 products that showed up. Because I put a filter on this table, I'm only showing products here that contain the word product and have my family subscription. And that's something that I'm not representing in this table in terms of the variable I'm showing, but as a configuration, a data point that I have in Salesforce to control what shows up here. And then I have a footer row that is totaling up the product subtotal at the bottom.
Great, and that's the under the hood way to do it. So from a application standpoint, one of the reasons I asked Kelsey to really dive deep into this is for a couple different reasons. One, I'm a very curious person, and I really like to understand the nitty gritty of how these things work. Second reason is because a lot of you out there are doing some pretty cool things, and understanding how these things work, I think really makes it easier to understand what other things, what new things can be done in the future. So obviously what we're talking about here in the example is one that a lot of you are using. Actually, Lee, I see you out there, and this is one of the reasons we were out and kind of doing tours of different customers that we've met out there in the last month. This subject kept coming up of really trying to understand how this works more than just the user interface. Customers wanting to understand how some of these complex, advanced dynamic content essentially works. And so we can start applying this methodology to a lot of different areas. It doesn't have to just be pricing tables, although that's probably the most relevant one for most of us in the room. But we see people using this for SOW work, for contract work, wherever you need to either hide or show different rows of data that can be fed in from any other source. This should give you a good example. And again, go to our support page, documentation. It shows how you can do this, and go around and play around with it, right? So the better you understand it, the better you can troubleshoot if you are having any odd behavior. Just understanding this stuff is really, really good. And so we hope to begin kind of educating from the very, very ground up, as a lot of you are doing some pretty complex things out there. As always, our support team is always here to help troubleshoot these things with you, or your account manager, renewal manager is always there as well. Great. So for our last piece here, I'm going to get up on a little bit of a soapbox here. And this is our last section within the webinar, and then we'll give a couple minutes back to you. So this is essentially us going from literally as far deep in the weeds as we possibly can go to as high as I can possibly think, all within a couple of minutes here. So throughout this webinar series over the last, how long have we been doing this now? Like
maybe 8 or 9 months?
8 or 9 months or something like that. We have done a lot of the very tactical tips and tricks and how to use our application and how to make everyone here better user of Octave and just make it more transparent to you. One of the things where I think we can really do a lot more that I would like to focus on, I'm going to be focusing on the second half of this year, is much more from the strategic side. Specifically, as we are looking at a lot of the data elements, we're starting to expose a lot more data within a reporting engine, and that is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and something that I'm really curious about, just asking a lot of questions. And so what I'm going to be doing here over the next just few minutes is kind of laying out an agenda that we're going to be working on, Kelsey, myself, and many others here at the Octave Labs, of understanding what's happening across our market. What we want to do is really start understanding how do we help our customers by understanding what's working and what's not working across the industry. And the way I'm thinking about this is from the broadest of all terms. Why are you essentially using Octave today, and why is that important? And it really comes down to this fundamental point. And the fact that the expectations of the typical buyer are changing are really important. I have said many times on this webinar series that my background is in marketing, specifically in marketing software. Specifically, more than that, digital marketing. And we saw that the whole concept of marketing has really changed the way buyers interact with the people that they're buying from the sellers. And we see this more often in our day-to-day lives from a B2C perspective. What I mean by B2C is obviously things like I go to Amazon and I buy just about everything in my life now from Amazon, or I go elsewhere online. I was actually just in the market for a new smartwatch, so if you have any suggestions on which smartwatch I should get, please let me know. But I literally went out there and I'm like, man, I really wish I could figure out how to wear a smartwatch or try out a smartwatch, and someone suggested, why don't you go to an actual physical store? And that's kind of foreign to me. I do almost all my buying online. That's really important. People from the B2C experience just have gotten much more natural of just going online first, doing their research online, and then going through the buying process when they make a decision. So the innate ability for us to do research is just more prolific out there today because of the web. And that has changed the way that all buyers, whether it's a B2C experience or B2B experience, really interact, right? So people are doing research more before they interact with a seller, essentially, and we apply this directly to B2B experience. So buyers are more educated. Their expectations are that the seller understands I'm already educated. By the time that someone picks up the phone and calls you, you better believe that they've already gone through, looked at all the competition, understood what the value props are, all those types of things. So the last thing is the fact that sellers, we literally have to change in order to keep up with the expectations of B2B. And this is largely driven from the world of marketing, the world that I came from, because marketers are changing the buyer experience, right? They're educating more than ever before. And so sellers are coming into the buying cycle at a lot later time, a lot later date, and their expectations are, you better talk to me in the realm that the fact that I already know what I'm thinking about buying, right? So this is really the whole concept behind Octiv. Octiv is a platform that we want to allow you, our customers, to be able to give your sellers, probably your customers as you think about it, more tools to be able to speak more relevantly with your end buyers every single day, because their experience matters. The better sellers can provide a better experience, and the better experience is what customers are looking for. So this is really important, and I know this is really out there, but one of the things that's bothered me about is, okay, we need people to change, but then I go straight to okay, what do I change? How do I change? How do I know it's working? And these are some of the questions that we really started asking ourselves. How do we identify what's working, and how do we start applying that to our day-to-day lives? And this is the research we're going to be starting to do over the next 6 to 8 months here. It's really starting to ask some very big questions. Things that we really care about are things that happen throughout the journey that a buyer takes as they're interacting with your brand. Things like questions that come to me are, when is the best time to send a proposal? What is the best content to send in a document that actually gets the desired action? Who should I send this to? What should I do if someone engages with my document? What do I do then? Is there any importance to that? And as we are exposing more and more data, and it's really important to understand that data is really the crux of all of this. There's a lot of claims by a lot of people out there, as you are probably doing your research and you're improving on yourselves every single day. You can go out there and you can look up what is the best day to send a proposal, and you'll get a lot of answers, and most of the research I've done has been very anecdotal. Things like, oh, the best time to send a proposal is immediately after you talk to them, or as quickly as possible. Well, cool. I could probably tell you that without even being in sales, that if I respond faster, the odds are you'll probably look at it more. But I'm more curious about what is the actual impact. I want to be able to measure that down to a percentage change. So if we can follow up with a proposal within 2 hours versus 12 hours, I want to know exactly how much does that change my odds of winning that deal, or at least getting to the next step. What is that conversion? It's a very data-oriented question, and I want to be able to answer that as the best that I possibly can, leveraging nothing but data. And we're starting to collect all of this, not only about every individual interaction, but we're starting to understand what does this look like across industries. A lot of you ask us, hey, which KPI should be looking at? Efficiency, how much faster am I speeding up my sales process? A lot of those questions that you guys ask are really contextual. That's based upon what industry you're in, what sales process you have. And if you're playing buzzword bingo out there, get your cards ready, because a lot of this deals with things like big data, right? So the concept of big data is we're gathering a whole bunch of data around a whole bunch of customers, a whole bunch of interactions, and we're about ready to dive really, really deep into that data to see what it tells us, right? And so we're going to start asking a whole bunch of questions, and we're going to be starting to publish research papers around these questions. One of the first ones we're working on is what is the best day to send a proposal? This goes back to my email days, where honestly one of the biggest kind of clickbait type of research projects that almost every ESP out there does is what is the most important time, what's the best time to send an email? And the right answer is it depends, right? That's the right answer. But statistically speaking, we will be able to identify that there's going to be a certain time of day on a certain day of the week that just innately gets more opens, gets more interactions, gets more conversions for the documents that are sending. And this is super important because if we can help you, our customers, even change the game by 1%, if we can help you sell 1%, or sorry, win 1% more deals, how much does that mean to you? And for you as administrators, the people who own this, who care about this process stuff, you know, my goal is to get you promoted. That's my end goal. I want to make you guys look like heroes. I want to make sure you guys can go to your senior leadership as high as you can and say, hey, we moved the needle, and here's how much revenue it gave us. So I'm going to break all this down, and we want to do this, again, based upon data. And we want to be able to answer that. So if you'd be able to take to your leadership and say, hey, if we instruct that our sales reps really need to be sending their proposals for their most important deals before 4 o'clock on Friday, otherwise someone's not going to look at it until Monday, I think that's pretty important. I think that's meaningful, very tactical things that you can take to your customers, or sorry, to your sales team and inform them how to be better. And I don't want to just tell you how to do this stuff. I want you guys that join us on these webinars on a weekly basis to really understand how we're solving these types of problems. So I know I'm on the soapbox, that's why I put the soapbox on there, but at the end of the day, we're going to need your help. And I say that because I want to actually come to a lot of you that I do on a regular basis and test some theories. So we're going to be looking at a lot of this data. We're going to be sharing a lot of this data in its very early stages just to get reactions. And for again, those of you that are on the join us on a regular basis, I'm going to try to dedicate at least 5 to 10 minutes of these monthly calls really to dive into some of these very in-depth subjects by looking at the data and start getting some early cuts at this. So this is your early warning that if you really hate this stuff, that you'll want to tune out about 5 to 10 minutes before we end. And if you really enjoy it, you're going to have to stick around because we'll probably do it at the end of every one. So this is your fair warning. Again, very, very passionate Adam Becker here, but at the end of the day, I think this is really important for making all this better, and I'm super excited to be able to see where we go with all of it. That's it. I'm off my soapbox.
That's it. Step down.
I know.
Great. Well, we hope you guys join us next month. Again, this is a monthly webinar series, so our next webinar will be Thursday, August 17th at 4 p.m., 1 month from now. And as always, remember we've got a support site out there, which is a great place for a lot of knowledge and a place to find more details on the things we talk about on these webinars, octiv.com/support. I think we've got just a couple questions that we've left unanswered at this point, and I just wanted to answer a few of them for the group. We had a few people interested in these auto-generated tables we spoke about earlier today, and wanted to let you know that if you're maybe not interested in taking a stab at building one of those tables yourself, Octiv certainly does offer services to help get that set up in your account. We certainly want to make sure that you're creating the most efficient and helpful documents possible. One of the great things about our integrations with CRMs is that when you can get an auto-generated table like that working, it means less manual reentry for you and for your reps. So saving time and improving accuracy of those documents. So please reach out to our support team or a relationship manager and let us know that you're interested in maybe purchasing a services package or talking about the options to get something like that set up in your account. Let's see if we've got any last questions that have come in.
Not as of yet.
All right. So we'll hang for another minute or so to see if there's any other questions. And if not, we thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next month.
Thanks, everyone.